What do insanely poor people buy that ordinary people know nothing about? Growing up, my family had its moments of struggle. Our public transport system at the time had tickets which were simply hole-punched with the date and month, not the year. So we'd save them and store them neatly in envelopes marked by month and concession or full fare. After a few years of saving tickets, we pretty much had free train and bus travel for the next 10 years, until they changed the ticketing system to electronically stamped tickets with barcodes. Extended stay housing or motels/hotels. When you can't qualify to get an apartment because you don't have proof of income, you end up wasting more money to stay for a week at extended day housing or a cheap motel. It sucks as having no home/being a transient. I promised myself never to be in the same situation again. I was so poor once that I would go to Long John Silver's and order a water and crunchies, which used to be free, then sit there and watch the people that would dine in. It was amazing how little they ate, and then they would leave without dumping their tray off in the trash. Fries, hush puppies, chicken, fish, all untouched. No, I didn't eat a piece that was bitten off of. I once saw a woman order a 2-piece fish and more for her kid, that ate 1 hush puppy and a few fries, and then left the rest of it there. It was the best I had eaten in weeks. Glad that's behind me now. Lots of school systems do free lunches for kids under 18 during the summer. When I was a kid, I remember my dad taking us to get lunch at the school, then go play disc golf, soccer, or do something else free and fun. It was a blast, and I had no clue it was because we were poor. Dollar theaters, and sometimes they have a free afternoon/evening show for kids with the purchase of a parent ticket. Many movies were seen by the 3 of us for $4 with a shared popcorn and Coke. My dad was amazing at making us feel rich on basically nothing. Edit. A lot of people seem to pointing out my dad was irresponsible for having children without being financially prepared. My mom left us when I was 6. Little brother was 2. She had her own stuff to work out, but she wasn't there to help out. My dad was an assistant teacher at the time, working to become a teacher, which was plenty to support us with her help, but alone and suddenly without any help he struggled. He ended up getting a second job, but we were still pretty poor for several years before he got his teaching position. When I was a child, Burger King ran a special kids meal where it was 2 mini burgers that were attached to each other like a weird conjoined burger experiment. Sometimes we would go. My dinner was 1.5 of the mini burgers, my mom's dinner was the half I didn't eat, and she would fill up on the free refills of soda. I have been both very poor and very comfortable. A lot of very true statements already posted here, but here's what I have noticed. When you are broke, you can't plan ahead or shop sales or buy in bulk. Poor people wait to buy something until they absolutely need it, so they have to pay whatever the going price is at that moment. If 10 packs of paper towels are on sale for half price, that's great, but you can only afford 1 roll anyway. In this way, poor people actually pay more than others for common staple goods. I had a really odd childhood. Until age 9, my family would have been classed as upper middle class. Then my father left and my mom went batshit crazy. From 9 to 18, we were dirt poor. I remember being 10 years old and our weekly treat was to go to the Littlewoods Cafe. I think they went bust, and they did a 99p 5-piece breakfast. We shared that among my mom, brother, sister, and me. One of us got the extra item, we'd take turns. As an adult, I have made sure my children will never know poverty because of excellent memories like that. Nothing motivates you more than memories of fighting over a solitary sausage. Learning the times of the day when meat, bakery, fish, vegetable, and miscellaneous items are reduced to 75% at the local supermarket. I've been learning for years, but it's a good day when you find 400 g of fresh mince for 99p, and you have warm filling food that you used to take for granted when living with parents. One thing I've noticed about being poor is that you become almost vegetarian because meat just costs too damn much, frozen or fresh. Another thing would be buying the cheapest large container of yogurt and mixing in jam for fruity yogurt. But that's not about being poor, that's just a good idea. I knew a guy that would go to a livestock feed store and buy antibiotics and some other meds there that were meant for farm animals when he got sick. There was another med he'd get at pet stores too. He'd just cut the pills into smaller pieces to try to guess what the proper mg amount was. It's apparently crazy cheap for certain meds and doesn't require a prescription or government oversight like it would at a normal pharmacy. About a year ago, I was addicted to alcohol. For 1,000 kilometers from home, dropped out of school and living in my 20-year-old car. I got so used to eating microwaved potatoes that I considered walking into a 7-Eleven's and pocketing a handful of mayo packets while pretending to buy a hot dog, a special treat. I grew up distinctly middle class and generally did not want for much. My recent experience has really put into perspective the difficulties experienced by people who are or have been in similar situations to myself. but bear the burden of direct responsibility to kids and family. Things have gotten a lot better since I've accepted the help of other people. Seriously, even relatively tiny gestures of kindness will go a long way with someone who is literally struggling for survival. Never underestimate the impact you can have upon another person's life. I'd probably be dead by now if it weren't for the unconditional love and support of friends, family, and random strangers. Instead, I'm 25, relatively healthy again, and back in school trying to finish off my engineering degree. If you've taken the time to read this, then thank you, it means a lot. In university, I used to buy a 10 to 20 pounds bags of potatoes, freeze-dried chives, and gravy mix in bulk, not the supermarket packs which are $1 for 2 cups of gravy, restaurant-sized packs that make 8 liters. That was often dinner, usually at the end of the month when money got tight. Sometimes I had even saved enough that I could have mashed potatoes made with some sort of dairy or bacon grease. I also had a cheap tub of protein powder for weightlifters. It was gross, but I would blend it up, usually with water, hold my nose, and gulp it down. It was actual protein, and slightly more healthy than a week-long diet of potatoes. You can get new car parts from the junkyard for virtually nothing, with added discounts if you remove them from the junkers yourself. I had a 12-year-old car in college, and when it blew a tire, I went to the junkyard and found a decent set of tires. Bought all 4 for $70, which reduced my food budget to $16 for the next 2 weeks. Some lady in the grocery store saw me with a calculator trying to figure out how much ramen I could buy with $16 and handed me a $20. It made me cry. I'm glad I'm not poor anymore, but I'll always remember that lady. Edit. Thank you everyone for sharing your stories. I'm glad there are people like this in the world and that so many of us have experienced their kindness. And for those of you talking about how much ramen $16 can buy, let the record show I was probably buying other necessities like tampons or flour or something. My father and sister and I would spend all Sunday picking up cans to be recycled at the lake. So while all the other families were enjoying their cookout, we would scavenge through garbage cans. We did this because our father would take us to McDonald's afterwards. So after a whole day we would trade the aluminum in for a few bucks. My father would order a Big Mac, back when it was $1, and a small coffee. My sister and I would share the burger, she getting the part with 2 pieces of bun because she was older and I ate the solo. My father sat there and had multiple refills on his coffee. We spent many Sundays like that. Back when my dad had just left us, he's not a deadbeat or anything, they just separated. My mom and I fell on harder times than usual. We went from a house with 5 kids and 2 parents to a tiny duplex for just her and I. I remember we would go to the Dollar Tree and every now and then I'd be able to get a toy. Do you guys remember the little 4 boy and 4 girl bags they had? It was like 5 toys for the price of 1. That was like winning the lottery, man. I was so happy with those things and my mom would get them for me just to see me smile. However, soon after we sort of pulled out of the worst bit, but we had a few little dips here and there. Food was never an issue, but we had cable turned off sometimes and things like that. I remember one day my mom came home and said she had a surprise for me. My child self had the audacity to ask, "Is it from the Dollar Tree?" with a condescending tone. To this day, I have no clue why I asked that because I felt immediately shitty once her face had that look of embarrassment. I am 18 now and was about 12 then. I've since said sorry and she had no clue why I cried saying it. People, take what your parents give you and thank them for every little gift. They love it and they might not have the money, but they're sure as hell going to find a way to give you the world the best way that they can. I just learned this from a teenage burglar a couple years ago. Baseball caps with a completely straight brim and the stickers still on it were made popular because inner city kids wanted to prove they could afford brand new name brand things. It's kind of sad that's how some trends start. Edit. I was a burglary detective at the time. The kid was 18 at the time. He was stealing to buy shoes. We found over 20 new pairs when we searched his apartment. Poverty made this person what he was. I was sad to see it. He did 2 years in jail. Then he got out and started back up again doing the same thing. Now he's going back. I know a really poor family that buys loads of candles to light their home at night so that they don't have to pay for electricity. It makes me sad. Electricity cost per kilowatt hour is way cheaper than candle cost per hour burning, and clearly way brighter. You may want to suggest to them to write down the costs and compare. Edit. Yes guys, no shit, the train of thought would be different if they had their power cut or fees. But since all I know is what the guy above me said, all I can comment on is comparing costs. I'm sticking with facts, not assumptions. Here, candles cost way more. Like way more. Like many ways. It's not about what you buy, it's about what you can make or substitute. Can't afford to run the gas to run the stove and want French toast. Toast the bread on the barbecue grill, melt some butter and sprinkle cinnamon sugar on it. Can't afford real spaghetti. Mix some tomato soup and butter, heat till warm. Pour over some ramen. You have yourself Pullman spaghetti. You will be surprised what you can get for almost free at garage sales or online. Check cashing services. I count it as a buy because it costs money to cash your paycheck there, and you need an account at the check cashing place, which costs money to get too. Of course, you can't go to the bank because you got blacklisted after Bank of America reordered your debit card charges and took $1,100 in fees from you that you didn't have, and then forced your account in the red with low balance fees and took you to collections. Congress had to pass a law to stop this, and now you can't get a normal bank anywhere because BOA blacklisted you. Shame nobody bailed out all the people that the banks did that to after they passed the law, huh? Great question. I'm poor right now and have a 3-year-old daughter and a loving wife. I try to stay as frugal as possible, and my wife is even better. Twice a week she goes to the food pantry to get a whole bunch of stuff. Anything we don't use we redonate. After coming back she'll spend around $30 to $40 on vegetables and meats per week, and she can make it last. She grew up in Mexico with very little money and always had to feed 5 to 6 people on $30 a week. Best enchiladas I've ever had. Many poor people buy a lot of eggs. Eggs are one of the cheapest and best tasting sources of protein. Enough for 6 meals costs less than $2. Many poorer people around where I live eat a lot of venison. If you have the time to go stand in the woods during deer season, you can get yourself 70 or 80 pounds of meat really cheaply, especially if you do your own butchering. My wife won't eat venison. When she was young and poor and first starting out years ago, that was the only meat they had to feed the family for several years, and she doesn't ever want to see it again. Probably get buried, but it wasn't so much buying weird things, but paying for things with loose change. As a kid we would be so broke we would have to look everywhere for change, using every single penny for gas, food, or whatever. It was always so humiliating to pay for something all in change. Walking to the cashier and paying for a loaf of bread and lunch meat with nickel, dimes, and pennies. I remember riding in another adult's car and seeing their center console full with loose change. I thought they had to have been so rich. I thought that if I could have that much change just sitting there when I was older, everything would be all right. Bags of dried lentils and beans. Funny, that's what all the hipsters are eating. They're just crazy about making awesome dishes out of lentils and beans from Whole Foods. They don't realize that's what poor people have been doing for years, just not from Whole Foods. Not that it even matters where you buy them, as they're all just lentils and beans. Buying or asking for a newspaper every day can be surprisingly helpful. First and foremost, staying well informed is often a good way to make poverty manageable or even get out. Knowing the weather before it happens is the difference between staying dry and getting soaked. Job listings are essential, as are public events that might have a free meal in it for you. If it's winter and you need to get warm quick, newspaper is ideal tinder. A few sheets on the ground can keep moisture and cold out. It can be used to insulate your clothes when nothing else is at hand. If you go to a coffee shop and read for a while, then ask for water, you're more likely to get it than if you had just walked in and asked. Makes you look like you're waiting for someone and will by order when they get there. A rolled up newspaper or magazine is as effective as a baton in a fight. If you want to make a few dollars, newspaper is great for cleaning windows. I don't begrudge any hardship I've had in childhood or adulthood. By world standards, having to eat government-provided food or going to churches to keep from starving or having to accept the goodness of charitable giving was dignified compared to what other poor kids in the world had to suffer. I never had to sell my body or beg in the streets. I was safe from exploitation and all the things that befall poor kids. Thank you, FDR. I made it. The cycle is broken. My kids have never seen poverty. Never disparage the safety net of social services. They don't encourage poverty or laziness. They save lives. Unfortunately, they do both. I'm glad you had help when you needed it, and so have I, but they need to stop subsidizing people who can't afford to have kids to have them anyway. We're being overrun, and at least the ones who read Alinsky are doing it on purpose, as he says they should. I'll say it since I haven't seen it mentioned elsewhere in the thread. It isn't what you buy, but what you can get for free. Sometimes that means stealing. Ever heard of the 5-finger discount? I have been homeless at one point, and there were many times I went to sleep without a crumb of food all day. You can only survive this way so long before you resort to other methods of obtaining things like food, and in some cases, stealing becomes a valid option. I have been so hungry that I walked into a grocery store and loaded up at the deli only to sneak out the door with all that food and finally be able to eat a decent meal. I have asked a friend to hold my feet as I fished old clothes out of those big blue donation bins just so I had a jacket to sleep in outside. I could go on, but the poverty that we think doesn't exist here in the US is very real for many people, and it's extremely hard to pull yourself out of it without a helping hand.